Welcome back to everyone. Today I'm joined with Cheryl Brown Hickerson from Females in Finance and Bernice Oliver from the National Association for Advancement of Women in Insurance. And today we're going to have it really, I don't even need to have sat through the session or the tech check to know it's going to be a phenomenal session. We're really going to talk about and deep dive into multicultural marketing, positioning, are you ready for your practice, et cetera. So quite a few topics within the diversity space. Now, because of the sensitivity of the topic, we certainly want to have questions. The dialogue is, as we all know, critical to have, but we also know that many people are uncomfortable in a public setting such as this, as perhaps putting forward a question. So if you're uncomfortable or you just want to have it privately asked in an anonymous fashion, please feel free to post your question in the chat and send it directly to me. My name is Suzanne Carowin. I'm the head of marketing here at NAFA. And so I will go ahead and I will handle that with the utmost discretion. And then at the end of the session, I will ask our speakers anonymously on your behalf, I'll be your proxy, about a question that you might have. I think you'll hear our speakers say over and over that we need questions more than ever. We need to have this open dialogue, but given our current environment, we all also understand the sensitivities abound. So with no further ado, I want to just again preempt preempt the session with saying a big thank you to all of our sponsors. The Business Performance Center would not be possible without them. And so again, a huge thank you to all of them. With no further ado, Cheryl, Bernice, thank you for being with us today. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hello, my friend Bernice. How are you?
Hello, Cheryl. Hello.
So we get into a little bit of a love fest. Bernice and I are friends outside of this, and it's good to see her face. And I appreciate everyone being here today. And I cannot encourage you enough to please use the chat box for today. Like, this is the time. I do have 3 requests, though. One is I want you to be involved. I actually want you to be involved in the dialogue that Bernice and I are going to carry today, because this is where you ask tough questions, and no questions too small, too anything. I want you to use Suzanne's suggestion too. Go down to the chat box and ask it anonymously, because I guarantee no matter what is on your mind, it's on someone else's mind too. So please ask. The second one is to be interactive. Please make this an interactive session, because what I want you to do, I'm really about being a person of action. I tell that to my children. I tell that to all my friends. I know Bernice is all about action. And so we want you to actually leave this today with something in your hand, something in your mind that you can go, because the third thing I'm going to ask you is to be the change. We need change agents everywhere, in the smallest of ways to the largest of ways. And to have a platform today like NAFA, who promotes dialogue. I'm proud to serve on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council at NAFA. And I want to just real quickly let you know, we are all about this space. Bernice, tell everybody about your background real quick.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, just wanted to say, Cheryl, thank you so much for inviting me to serve. I believe it. I really consider it an honor, and I'm extremely grateful to be here today to serve on this panel with NAFA. But I am the founder and executive director of National Association for Advancement of Women. We are specifically a leadership organization focused primarily on minority and multicultural women insurance professionals. And then also I run a professional development organization, Bernice Oliver International, where we focus in helping women build thriving insurance agencies. So we hope you launch, build, grow, scale thriving and profitable agencies. And as of late, I can add to my accolades, best-selling Amazon author. Yes. I just launched a book, yes, life lessons for the woman insurance entrepreneur, things that I've learned at navigating the 27 years in the industry. I'm also a coach, speaker, and trainer and facilitator. So super excited to be here. And thank you again for inviting me.
Absolutely. And my name is Cheryl Hickerson. Many of you know me as Cheryl Brown. Changed my name a few years ago, same person, and a little bit bigger in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion. In 2017, I launched a special interest group at the time called Females in Finance. And today we are actually a membership organization of a private community of 3,100 professionals. And I'm very proud of the Females in Finance advocacy that we do out there, because it brings me to great people like Bernice, with the support of organizations like NAFA and so many others, Penny Insurance, FSP, the list goes on. And I'm really proud to be in this space. What we're going to be focused on today are three main things. And she and I are just going to dialogue, and we hope that you'll ask questions below. I really want to talk about recruitment. I want to talk about training, and I want to talk about advancement because that means different things. All three of these pieces, when I started Females in Finance, I actually went out and had some really tough dialogue. Mernice was one of those individuals that I reached out to, that I had sort of profiled to see how are you finding individuals, or how are you bringing individuals in? What did that mean? Because what I found out was we weren't reaching all markets. And what I mean by that is we have a significant amount of underrepresentation out there today. And it's everywhere. And it's our job, as I said to you before earlier, to be involved, to be interactive, and be the change. But we can't do that when we don't even know the right words. And I'm going to give you a really hard example. So I told you it's going to be tough dialogue. So for some background for me personally, I have 6 children. Three of them, they were my babies that I had, and then I had 2 babies I met along the way, and one I scooped up in a marriage. So I have 2 children of color that both came to me through different ways. And I remember when my son Shamal came into our home, and I had to ask him the question, Shamal, do I say Black or do I call you African American? And he was like, I'll never forget. He said to me, he says, I'm Black, Mom. You can just say that. And I see Bernice giggling because she and I've had this talk before. And yet we are telling into, companies and firms, and we don't even have the right words that they're armed with. Bernice, you and I'm also going to share something that personally happened to me. Rolling back a few weeks ago, just to show you how you learn as you go along. I made a comment on Twitter. I love Stacey Abrams. I might have a picture of Stacey Abrams in my bedroom. This is a true story. Okay. I just think that what she's been able to do, all politics aside, this is not what this is about, to take one person, and that's what I did at Females in Finance. It's one person, and continually grow a following of individuals. It's just really profound amount of respect I have for that. And I went on Twitter and I said, you go, gal. And Bernice knows already. I saw her face change. I didn't think when I said that was wrong. And yet the words, Bernice, tell me what we talked about this, because I did get an education around it.
Well, because I'm from the South, I'm originally from South Georgia. I grew up in Albany, Georgia. I live in Atlanta now, but I'm from Albany, Georgia. So gal is considered a derogatory term, particularly when you're speaking to an adult woman of Black or African-American descent, because it really has the connotation of someone who is less than or not on the same level as you are when you refer to an adult woman as gal. So yeah, it's very offensive.
Right. And she and Bernice and everyone knows me well enough to know that my intentions were good. And yet, guess what? This was a perfect opportunity. And I'm going to tell you, I got the better part of at least 10 direct messages on Twitter that said, hey, just so you know, I think you're coming from a good place, but don't use that word, please. And I remembered thinking, and I didn't understand. And I got educated about why that was. And when you know better, you do better. And that's what we want you to do today, is when you know better, do better. So with recruitment, how do we reach all markets today? I know, Bernice, this is an area you do a lot of work in. Give me some examples of how we can be doing a better job of getting into all markets. And remember, everyone listening, please use the chat box, and Suzanne will field those questions for us.
Please jump in. We really want this to be a two-way dialogue, not just us talking heads talking.
Yeah.
So, but as it relates to recruiting, one question that popped to mind as I was kind of preparing for today was, where are we looking? First off, where specifically are we looking to bring on or target that specific, team member, or if we're expanding our customer base? And so when I'm thinking about how do we attract, hire, and retain top talent, we really want to begin to think about, are we treating them the same as we would our customers? And what I mean by that are we creating our marketing strategies? Excuse me, my recruiting strategies the same as we would our marketing strategies? And so when I say that, are we going to the same places that they hang out? Are we looking at what are their pain points when they're looking for a new opportunity? Do you know what their likes and their dislikes are? What specifically are some things that's going to, number one, attract them to be able to that want to consider be part of your team? But not only can we attract them, will they consider to be hired? And then how do we retain them? And I think we miss that part. We all just want to put out a very I think cookie cutter type of job description. We just kind of post it out there on Indeed and we hope we'll find the right candidate. But are we really showing our culture? That's a big part of it too. What's your agency culture? Are you sharing that? And is that inclusive to attract someone, a person of color, someone that looks like me? Or not only that, but is it a different gender that we're looking for, or someone from a different socioeconomic background? So there's so many facets to doing that. Are you leveraging, of course, social media, because everybody's there, particularly here in this last year, we've all been in pandemic. The use rate on social media increased by 400%. So are we leveraging social media to attract those individuals? And are we really showing the essence of who we are from our agencies or from our organization standpoint that's going to say, to spark that in that ideal candidate, to say that may be a company I want to look into? And I want to talk a little bit more about the compelling job descriptions. I do this recruiting because I help my agents in create their recruiting processes. And what I'm finding is so often we're copying and pasting. That really does not show your commitment, number one, to diversity, but also it really doesn't give an idea of who your company is and what's going on in your culture to really attract that top talent. Now, if you just want to hire, the average person, I think maybe that would attract them, but it's not going to attract that top talent. And so really spend some time when you're developing and fleshing out your job description. And it doesn't have to be the same, oh, here are going to be your descriptions, here are your work hours. No, talk a little bit about what you do in the course. What do you stand for? What are your core values? Because I think right now, as particularly too, if you're looking to attract Gen Z, millennial and Gen Z, what your companies stand for is so much more important than if you were looking to hire, say, for instance, a Gen Xer, and I'm a Gen Xer, so, or a baby boomer, because we all have different ways that we're looking as it relates to a company that we want to go work for. So I think that's also important. And then finally, what's the interviewing process? Back in the beginning, we all interview one-on-one, traditionally. And then I would say probably over the last 10 years or so, maybe 15, we gradually moved over to the panel interview. And Cheryl, are you aware of why the panel interview was really started? Why recruiters really started to move over into the panel interview?
I want to hear it.
Well, the reason being, and I was in corporate recruiting, and that's why I know I didn't know either, but it was really about really creating a more fair and equitable process to attract, hire, and retain top talent. Because we tend to, one-on-one, we are going to lean towards hiring more people that think like we think.
Yep.
Right? They're oftentimes going to look the way we look.
Yep.
They're going to have the same belief systems a lot of time. And so just because we're gelling, you know what I mean? Because we're vibing together, doesn't necessarily translate to that I'm going to be a top talent in your organization. And so the panel interview was created to kind of level out that playing field so that we have different perspectives and different eyes on each candidate.
And, I can't bring home this part of the dialogue enough, because she basically just gave you the pitch there on how to do this. One of the things that I want you to be really careful of too, as we go out, and this is not only recruiting people to come in as far as staff, but it's also clientele. I want to give you a very simple question that I ask everyone, because the first thing is I have been asked at previous events, like, why does there need to be a women's initiative, or why does there need to be a focus on women of color, people of color? And just because I tell everybody, just because I'm focused on dolphins doesn't mean that I want whales to not be here. There is an ocean of business that needs to be done. And the ecosystem is not set up in the work that we do today that just because we want equity for all doesn't mean that there's less for someone else. It means that we're all going to get the same pieces of pie that comes out. There's enough pie to go around, if you will. And so I say that because even for someone like me, when I'm going out and I'm looking for members of my organization to come into Females in Finance and be abundant and be a part of this, I stress myself against this to make certain that I'm not focusing on unconscious bias. And we all have it. For every person on here,
Absolutely.
the very best question I ever heard asked was at a women in insurance leadership conference. And they were talking about unconscious bias, and the woman, I think she was from Bank of America, and she says, "How many of you have unconscious bias?" And like there were like two people, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't ask that right. How many of you have unconscious bias?" Like she kept changing the same sentence. Finally, she's like, "Hint, everybody raise your hands," because we do.
Yeah.
So
All
when
do.
I,
Right.
yeah, and when I started my community, one of the very first things I did was I dialogued with Jocelyn Wright to find out, hey, how do I not build, a group of middle-aged white women? How do we go out and actually make this diverse? How do I make sure? And she goes, "Oh, thank you for asking me that. Let me give you advice." So for all of you, what Bernice just shared, if this is a space that you've traditionally been poor in, whether it's through your own staff, whether it's through your own book of business, stop, because now you know better, you do better. You're going to see a theme here. And then now it's okay, you have partners in this profession, whether that's through NAFA and the DEI council that's there. Bernice, I know, would welcome dialogue. Same here for pretty much anyone that I know. Make certain, if you're not certain on how to say what you're going to go out there and look for in recruitment process, that you're actually flexing it, and dialoguing about how to make that more dynamic. Okay.
Before you move on, though, I do want to
Yeah.
share a few statistics too, that because I believe that statistics, people who really, we're all in a, I think money, we're in a numbers driven
Yes.
industry, and so numbers really speak. And so, one, I believe that when we're failing to really embrace a more diverse audience, be it through recruitment or your customer base, we're losing money. We really are. And you're missing out on an opportunity to expand your customer base. And so I found some really, I thought, thought-provoking statistics that I would share. So women buying power influences drive 70 to 80% of customer purchases, according to Forbes.
Yeah.
So if you're not targeting, if you're not recreating your marketing to target more of the women buying power, you're missing out on 70 to 80% of customer purchases. African Americans are 14% of the US population, but we spend $1.2 trillion annually in the consumer market.
Wow.
So you're missing out. So because we outsize influence in several key consumer categories. And so, we're demanding that businesses do better and businesses do be better. And so, and then the last one is minority customer markets have grown faster than the buying power of whites since the year 2000. And that with the biggest increase from Asian Americans at 986 billion in 2017. And that was according to the University of Georgia. So startling statistics, but I think it's very telling in terms of how we all should be pivoting our strategies around, yes, recruitment, but absolutely how we're marketing and positioning our businesses in this global marketplace.
Yeah, and I got to piggyback real quick on that because I was sponsored once upon a time. Prudential had a meeting at, hope it was okay to say Prudential because it was. They had an Association of National Advertisers meeting in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and they had all these really big brands that are McDonald's and list goes on, Pepsi, whatnot. And they were talking, Bernice, to that very topic about how one of the ways that they embrace the future was they started removing, for the most part, if you actually look at their advertisements, they don't even have Caucasian families for the most part in those. They used to solely be that. And now today they have pretty much representation across the board of everyone. And they said that's because they anticipated the change that Bernice was talking about from the buying power years back. And they made changes in their marketing strategies. So much to what Bernice also said earlier when we started talking about your recruitment strategies should mimic your marketing strategies. It works. And if big brands, it works, it works. Okay. So this is really good point. The next one I wanted to talk about this is training, because how do we make certain every training reaches everyone? I want to give you an idea of what this looks like. When I did research for Females in Finance to find out how people were trained, there's reactive training and proactive training. Oftentimes the women that I was interviewing, when I saw lots of designations, they proactively went after that training because they were never offered training to react to, if that makes sense. So think about that. I've seen firms that say, oh, the training's open to everyone. So that's from the person who's answered phone to see everybody in between gets access to that training. It's not exactly. So it's not for everyone. So make sure you're very clear in what training is available. And then it's also on the firm's responsibility to stress themselves about who actually signed up. And I'm going to give you an example why. One of the feedback that I received on this particular topic a few years ago was, isn't it our responsibility? So Bernice and I as women, isn't it our responsibility to make sure our name is on the list? Yes, to some degree, you're right. At the same time, there is perceived negative if we leave a job that we're working on right now to go seek that next step, even though it was offered to us. Well, Bernice is not even doing her job. She's over here in that class. There's something there from a psychological component that we have to also have accountability toward. So when I was talking to different firms about this training up, are you making certain that everybody got access to it? Or did you make sure that you did have representation from every person? All of a sudden firms were a little wishy-washy on that. They're like, maybe not so much. And the same though, when I spoke to the women, as I interviewed, Bernice was one of them, as I mentioned, I asked her these questions, yes, there is a responsibility, but we also, I have to say one thing. It is difficult to be the first or the only of anything that's out there, whoever that is. I just got done reading a book by Jamie Kearns Lima, Believe It, IT Cosmetics. And she said, when you're the first in your family or the only, those are really tough positions to be in because the manual hasn't been written. Valera Wilson, You're Absolutely Worth It. She wrote this book. Same thing. She's the first person to go to college. You know how hard that is. Bernice, I would love to hear what you think too on this training thing, because I know that the first and only resonates because you and I have also had this discussion as well.
Oh, well, absolutely. Having been in the industry, 20 plus years, obviously, many, many times. And as someone who's always been, I think, looking for advancement opportunities, always positioning myself to take leadership lead on any type of project, I was often the only or the first. And so it is very difficult and it is very challenging. But I would think also in training, there is this negative connotation or this thought process that, yes, if you're looking for advancement, then you're not necessarily committed to the position that you hold. Yeah. So there's a question about your commitment. And so I was always in this whole conundrum of, do I, don't I? Am I going to stay in the wheel of where I am, even though I'm frustrated, even though I'm a little bit, I've done everything I need to do to perform at a high level, yet the advancement opportunity is not there for me because there's this whole thought process or this train of thought that maybe, they're questioning my commitment if I'm looking for advancement opportunities. And so as it relates to training, does it reach everyone? Could be. But are you asking your employees what their needs are? Don't assume, we all know as marketers, because we're marketing our businesses and so forth, we know when we're creating services or products to bring to the marketplace, we do our research, right? We go out to the market and we do market research. Then I think we should be doing the same thing as it relates to our training. What are those pain points and what do they need? And then the age-old with them, what's in it for me? Why would I attend this training? And so there was a company that I worked for many, many years. I won't name it, but I was there for 15 years. And there were several, CPCU, COU, all of those types of things were pushed for us to do it. But what was in it for me? My thought process was, is that really going to guarantee me an opportunity for advancement when I see others who haven't completed it and yet they're still advancing. We're going to talk about that later too. So is it really, or is it just another, I think, excuse to use against me because I don't have it for opportunities of advancement? And so,
and Bernice, to your point right there, I know one of the things that has come up time and time again, whether that's through the recruitment or the training part, is that women oftentimes do measure themselves against, do I have all the attributes to do that? And if they don't have a very large majority of that, they're like, and that's where the encouragement process comes in to say, I think you got this. You can do this. Whereas men are like, 20% of it, I got it. I'll fake it till I make it or whatever. And it's very
Right.
different mentality, but I think it would be remiss to act like that doesn't exist. It does.
And I found that statistic also, that 30% of the women will not apply for an opportunity if they can't check all the boxes, whereas 70% of the men will if they could check just one of the boxes.
And that's one of the things I
look
applaud,
for
like
those.
Google's coming out and saying, you know what, you don't even have to have a college. I want to know that you can do this, because I think there's talent out there that doesn't always get access to that. And to that point, I think it was just really opened up. And I know many of you might be saying, I'm not Google, I am this, but that's the point, is we got to get to that next level. We got to push through maybe the archaic way we've been doing things. I get that it worked for first generation owners and you might be a second. I get that, but we're on to a whole new level of professionals that are out there, tech forward, fast thinkers, young, attractive, talent that's out there that's just within our grasp, but we're just not going that extra step to reach out to them.
I
And
think InsurTech is
yeah.
really going to push us. It's here.
Oh,
it's going back. Yeah, it's here. So it's not going back to the way it is. And if we don't embrace it, as I said earlier, we're losing money, dollars from your bottom line, and you're missing the opportunity to grow your customer base if you're not embracing these new things. One more thing I do want to say, I know we've moved on to the advancement.
That's okay.
Part, but those micro learning sessions, because I operate in that whole training and development space. That's what I do each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but what I found is they're not looking for the 2-hour all day long listening to the talking head. That's just not going to work anymore. It isn't. They're looking for technology. Can I take this training from this computer here that I carry around every day, my cell phone? They want that. Can I have micro learning and self-paced learning? But it's about going back to your customer base, which is your employee base, your sales force, whatever, and asking, what are their needs? What are they looking to be trained in? And then how do they want to be taught? How do they learn?
Yeah.
And building your training around that. So thank you for allowing me that.
No, of course. And this is where, so advancement, how do we make certain to offer equitable advancement opportunities? Again, I first of all got to give props to Carla Harris because she has this whole thing about having a sponsor in the room. It is so critical. Not everybody, believe it or not, is taught that you have to have a sponsor. Once upon a time, and I've been working in insurance for 32 years this year. I'm going to be 50 years old in 8 days. Okay. First job I ever got was in insurance. The only job I've ever had since. This is the space that I know. I once upon a time the naivete was, well, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to do this. And they're going to notice that I'm doing this work. This is, Bernie, she's shaking her head. Yes. They're going to notice it because I don't want to be too intrusive to them, because then I'm considered bossy. I'm, a bunch of other words, especially for women. It's compounded if you're a woman of color. Just so you know, that's a fact. That's not, I didn't make it up. It's true. And they're going to go into that room and make decisions. And then I get let down because somebody who had less experience made it. Do you know what? My responsibility was to have a sponsor in that room, for me to grab that person and say, hey, when you go in there, you remember this face. And I'm going to tell a funny story about that, because after I learned about what being a sponsor was, I'll never forget. I was working at a fairly large marketing organization, insurance organization, and I had bought a new car. And I remember what Carla said about the sponsor, Maurice. And I walked into president of the company and I said, hi, I just need 2 minutes, less than 90 seconds. Will you come with me? I pointed out the car. I said, do you see that car? I just bought that. So when you come to laying anybody off or whatever, you see Cheryl Brown, just skip over her name. I don't know who's after me. I was putting my sponsor in that room. And I joke about that because it's funny. But in actuality, the truth of it is, if we don't have that, then advancement opportunities become very slim.
Oh, absolutely.
True?
And
Okay.
I'm certainly an advocate for
Yeah.
sponsorship. Absolutely. I think, I was listening to, and I have a little story real quick. I was listening to an interview on CNN. They were interviewing Indra Noya. She was the CEO of Pepsi at the time. And they asked her what was her one regret or her biggest regret, because she was stepping down at the time. She said her biggest regret was that she failed to create a pathway for a successor for a woman to take her position, or to walk behind her and come behind her and take that same path for the opportunity to serve as the CEO of Pepsi. She said she really didn't do it. She was not a sponsor. And that was her one regret. And I thought, wow, that's huge for her to really be, I think, that so self-introspective to think, I really didn't reach behind and pull someone behind me. So absolutely, I think we should have sponsors. But here's one concept that I think we need to address in the room. And it's the concept of ducks picks ducks. And so I heard this on 60 Minutes on Sunday. And that's true. We just tend to promote from who we know, and people that we look like, and people that think the way that we think. And that's unfortunate, particularly as it relates to the insurance industry. It's always kind of been that the friends and family thing. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's the person who is best positioned and has the skill set to really be successful in this position, more so than it is over a friend versus a family. And so that's what I mean. Ducks picks ducks. They don't pick squirrels. They don't pick elephants. They pick ducks. We have to move away from that. We've got to really, expand our pool and look beyond the obvious selection choice, and really add, I think, a little bit more transparency and commitment to the equity of the advancement opportunities as it relates to how we're having a sponsor or an advocate at the table. Typically, you and I both know that we're not even invited to the table.
Yeah.
So we're not in the small rooms. I host a monthly executive roundtable, and we talk about different topics. For now, every month we have a monthly executive roundtable. And one of the questions was, how do we have an advocate inside of the room? Big thinkers meet in small rooms. Well, we're not getting invited to the small room. So we're missing out on those really conversations to really help spark that change. And so how do we change that? And I think you're right. I think it's about relationships. It's about sponsorship, and really having an advocate about whether or not we're truly committed to diversity, or is it just lip service?
Yeah. And I know that that's an unfortunate thing, that people will hear that and think, oh, no. And I'm going to also remind you, this has nothing to do about you being a good person. But I'm a good person. I hear that a lot in these DEI discussions. Nothing to do with someone being a good person. What we're asking you to do is be a better professional, because when you know better, you do better. And so what's that next step that you can do? What's that next thing that you're going to do? And I think that that's sometimes where things get a little bit lost. And that's why it's actually the next part of the slide, because what are you going to do with all this? I tell my children all the time, I raise children to be people of action. I can't be here forever on this earth. I wish I could. I've enjoyed my time watching them, I have 9 grandkids. I'm not going to be here to do that. So my job is to instill in them this idea of becoming a person of action. Okay, now you know this. What are you going to do with it? What's some steps, Bernice, that you feel are really important for others to hear and act on, they could do, that are
I think take this conversation and continue it beyond today. I believe when I teach and coach, I talk about, implementing it tomorrow. Don't take this information and hoard it. Don't keep it to yourself. Go and have this conversation immediately with the team that you have. If you're leading a team, let's have this conversation. Be more open about it and having, sharing these different perspectives. And I think the biggest part is listening. We all want to get our point across. We do. We all want to share our own perspectives, but sometimes it requires active listening and really to understand that other person's perspective as it relates to diversity. And I think that's so very, very important. So, I would really suggest today, take a moment after this session and write down your top 3 action steps that you can use this information that we shared today beyond this session. And once we wrap at 1:45, what are you going to do at 1:46 or at 2 o'clock? How are you going to use it? And how are you going to spark that conversation? And it's okay if your opinion or your perspective is not the norm. It's not what everybody's thinking. It's perfectly okay, because I think the conversation has always been the linchpin of change. It just is. It starts with a conversation. And I think we have to have more open and transparent conversations. But also, I think we need commitment. I talk about this often. We don't want just lip service, because I think in the insurance industry, we talk a lot about it, and then we do a little bit, and then we move away from it. But we can't do that anymore, because we're all competing on this global market now. It's a global market. The pandemic has done a lot of things, but one thing for sure I'm convinced of, it opened us all up to a global market, because now we can see that there are so many facets to running a business globally. We can't afford to overlook it. So we have to be committed to, okay, once we have this information, what will be our steps to embrace it and really show our marketplace that we're committed to diversity, whether it through your customer base or from your employee base. It has to be action, not just lip service.
Love it. Love it. All right. So that leads us to the questions. And I know there's one here in the chat, and I thank you, Keith, for making this. And he said, very interesting and informative. Kudos. One of the biggest obstacles for inclusion is the lack of a turnkey training program once the talent's found. I'm developing some for a few different markets, and I just started encountering a few companies that will offer a draw to get people going or take it up another level. Are there any that you recommend?
And I'm not clear on the question. I'm thinking they're asking about turnkey training programs. And I can't say specifically off the top of my head. I know one of my go-to resources, and I'll share that as it relates to training, is ADT. Because they have so many resources, how to create and develop training. And I use it as one of my sources when I'm looking to develop a new training.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. Huh.
So I would say really use that as a resource. It's ADT. Hold on. And I want to make sure that you guys have that correct, the right.
See, I'm learning too with everybody. I'm writing stuff down. Suzanne, you got some questions there for us? Thanks for letting us have this platform.
A total plug to, so actually, I feel like if you like this, you'll love. So all of this topic is also bundled within the Talent Development Center, and the DEI Council that Cheryl's a part of is actually oversees a lot of these topics and webinars and work. So if you like this topic, you have a lot more coming your way, including Cheryl, on April 6th to 8th at our Impact Week. So we'd love for you to come into that. And actually, one of the things the council is working on is putting together, or actually maybe acquiring, a turnkey diversity kind of DEI training program. So I just want to let you know that we want to make that available to NAIFA members. It's on the way. So, so just a great time to do that. I'll put the chat in the, or I'll put rather the URL to register for Impact Week in the chat as well.
Thanks.
We would, of course, because we're going to do as much as we can to push this message. At NAIFA, we believe in financial security for all, and we mean it. We really mean it. So we need more advisors coming into the industry, right? We serve Main Street USA. We need the forces that reflect Main Street USA. We need to be able to do that. We definitely need a more diverse.
Oops, somebody's got their sound on.
Somebody's got their mic on. Okay.
There we go.
And I want to say, if you guys need help with that, I'd love to lend my hand.
We love to take them. So come on.
Absolutely. I'm DEI
I think
certified.
we just recruited a volunteer.
Yes, I volunteer. Absolutely. I have my own DEI certification from the University of Florida. And so it certainly helps.
We're building out the center. We have, if you want to blog, we have, if you want to speak, all of these things. This is our center together collectively, NAIFA, and we're serious about this work. This is part and parcel of our 2025 strategic plan, building on the last 5 years of doing this, but just continuing that forward. So that's definitely right where we're headed. But I do have some other questions too. So here's a question for both of you. And also I'll note, one of the things behind the scenes that we're working on while we're speaking in real time is that I think everybody's also aware of the rise in hate crimes and violence against Asian Americans that's been happening recently. So we want to say NAIFA's behind all of our members. We're working on a statement and support. We support all sorts of different niche groups within that. So just, to all of our Asian American members out there and advisors, we're with you and we support you. And again, we're in it for all consumers and our small businesses that we all serve. So questions that I did get, one of them is really getting your thoughts from your perspectives, because you guys are so steeped in the DEI community. Like, what's the deal? Why is it so difficult? Why
Yeah.
is it so difficult, right? And I think really now with cancel culture, it's ratcheted up the difficulty to it's so difficult because I think everyone's now so scared to say the wrong word. Like now we find out can't use gal, et cetera, et cetera. Scary. People are scared to even put themselves out there because of the possible kind of backlash. So advice, or where do you go? And I think you're right in saying that there's a lot of talk all the time. There's a lot of good intention. But I think a lot of times what you see is the people that are already impassioned about DEI talk about DEI, and they're already from those communities. So how do we get that, kind of into the mainstream? Or what's your take on why is that so difficult?
Bernice, you want to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's, really sharing the message of inclusiveness for everyone.
Yeah.
Yes, the cancel culture is very real, but I think there are a lot of myths to the cancel culture. And I think because there's this thought that DEI excludes a demographic of people, and that's not what that means at all. It's not about exclusion, but it's part of inclusion. But I think the message has been muddled, to be honest with you. It's gotten muddy over the years, and it's kind of become a bad word for whatever reason. I don't know why. So I think it's people like us and having these types of panels and dialogues to share, it's not about exclusion. It really is about inclusion and really sharing that message that we want everybody to be part of this conversation. So I agree with you. I think it is difficult, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me. It really is.
I gotta add one thing, because when I made the comment about Stacey Abrams being my gal, or that gal, watch that gal, everybody knew I was coming from a good place. Mm-hmm. At no point when somebody came to me and said, hey, yeah, that's not a great way to say it. That would be like if I said, oh, you said my name is Suzanne, and I kept going, okay, Susanna. You'd be like, yeah, my name's Suzanne. Oh, okay. And I didn't purposely do it. You know why? Just because somebody corrected my thought process to broaden my blinders a little bit didn't mean that I got something taken away from me. I got something added to me. And I think a lot of times there's this idea of less. Well, if I give Bernice more space, that's less for me. If I give Cheryl that opportunity, then I don't have that. It's not because I get something you don't. When you give Bernice an opportunity, you give so many other Bernice out there an opportunity. And I think that's why I always speak about abundance mindsets.
Yeah, the growth mindset.
Come ready. Mm-hmm. Because it's not about taking away from you. We're actually adding to you in your practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. If the fixed mindset, I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, we are an organization, we're a professional organization of performance-minded people. So we are a community of growth-minded people. Fixed-minded people don't do well.
Yeah.
They just don't do well. They're always going to be limited. So, I think maybe that's a take home, right? Don't be limited. Yeah. So what do you guys think as in the terms of kind of ending there, kind of some key takeaways, or what could people today do? And you gave some kind of action items, but what could they do right now as a professional that they can become more aware of the diversity needs that are out there? Either something they can do personally, is it just an awareness thing, or put into action? What could they do maybe with their clientele? Any thoughts there?
Well, I'm going to just suggest two, and then maybe Bernice, you do too. One is, if you don't know how to go into communities that may not look like you, and that could mean a variety of different things, start doing some personal development around it. And personal development's hard. I want everybody to hear this very loud and clear. When we have to, professional development walks in and we got like a notebook and it's usually got fancy and we sit down and we greet each other. And no, personal development means we crack open and thumb through the files of your brain. And that's uncomfortable. But if you really spend some time understanding why it is that you've been doing what you've been doing to get what you've always got and start expanding that, everything else all starts to open up and you start seeing things like, oh, I didn't have this. This will grow my practice. All of these things happen. And I have to tell you, like, Mernice and I didn't know each other at all. I mean, I just reached out, really a cold call and just said, I see you doing these things. Would you spend 20 minutes talking to me about this? And she said, yes. And now she's my buddy.
Now we have girl crush. Yeah, we
I
have
know. Now we girl crush.
Yeah.
What about you,
But I
Maurice? What do you
agree.
think?
I was just going to jump into that. I think just to piggyback on the whole personal development, I was going to say, educate yourself. I think sometimes spending some time in spaces that you wouldn't normally spend time in. I really do. Maybe embracing something, a different culture or a different mindset. I think it helps you to expand beyond where you are in your own little box. We all tend to live in our own little boxes, right? We do, in our own little neighborhoods, our own little homes. And so we kind of get that tunnel vision and we think it's one way. But I've always been that girl that would go and talk to the person sitting over in the corner and figure out what they're about, because I just want to know what makes people tick. And so I would say that. And here's a great thing, you guys, this is a tip that I do. I find Facebook groups that I have nothing in common with them in the group.
I've done that.
And I go in and I listen. So I eavesdrop, because they will tell you anything and everything you want to know about them. And so if you want to know about people who love purple unicorns, go and join a group on Facebook and just spend a week listening to seeing what the comments are and what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It expands your mindset beyond where you are. And so it's just been a common practice of mine now. I join a couple, and I don't stay always. I may spend a couple of weeks and then I'll go and bounce in another one, that type of thing. But it really helps me to think beyond the front of my face.
And as we wrap, I have one thing that I want to say for everybody who's a NAIFA member here, because it says there's 88 people listening. The next time we all get to meet in person and go to a real conference and we go to that lunch and we see that table, do not sit with people you know. You're going there to be a better professional. Go find a table, because I love John Richardson, or I love Suzanne, and I love Zach Hughes, and I love Brendan. I love all these people, but it is my job to go find somebody new and say, hi, I'm Cheryl. Tell me about what you do. That's how you do what Mernice and I are talking about, what Suzanne's talking about, what they're creating here at NAIFA with DEI. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. It's one of the first things I heard Cheryl say when the first many time I heard you talk is that go find the person who's sitting by themselves at the conference. Go find the person who's sitting by themselves in the stands or wherever you might be, and just say, hey, is a seat taken, right? And be that person to reach out. And one thing I'll say, and I'll just totally, I think one of the pieces I did is I did kind of a self-assessment. And one of the first things I did is to just write down your environment, write down what you're immersed in all the time, right? Because that's where your language is coming from, et cetera. And I had to do this kind of breakdown personal development. And I realized most of my life, I just did it right now on our call. I said, you guys, and I'm talking to two women, right? It's just a total thing. But I have spent almost my entire career only with men, very few females, right? I'm always the highest ranking female. And I don't have a real good thing. And all of my, and then also just immersed in sports. So a lot of the words that I use, the phrases that I use can be very distancing, let's say to groups of women, because maybe that's not their vernacular. That's not their dialogue. And I thought it was a really good exercise to break those things down to see, okay, if I'm going into a different population, how will I approach that, right? How do you school yourself to hold back on phrases that might just be your euphemisms? It's hard to not speak in those little idiosyncratic little space fillers and take that time to be purposeful and learn the dialogue. In the DEI Council, one more fortuitous plug, Angela Lap Johnson is one of our co-chairs of the DEI Council. She's really, really, really good at talking about words and the words you use and the definition. So one of the things we've taken on is to put together kind of a definition dictionary, if you will, for words and those types of things, and see if we can collaborate. So everyone is more than welcome to join in on that process, but so we understand the words and things like we'll add in gal and those types of things that people trip up on, especially if you're working globally, because working globally is just, it's hard enough to work from the south to the north, right? Let alone to go global. So I
Yeah.
think it's something that helps all of us as we go forward as professionals come together, and that's what our professional association is really here to do. So if there's any other questions, let me just take a peek real
I
quick.
commend you, Suzanne, for the work as you came in and you did such an amazing job. And it just, NAIFA is so fun to be around because of a lot of the work you and so many of the other team leaders
Oh.
are doing. So I want to make certain I give you an accolade on that. And I do. It's so funny. I have to tell you, I see Evelyn Geller. So real quick, Evelyn Geller one time put together this networking group of people, and I just happened to join it one night. Best fun I ever had. All these women from New York. I'm sitting back here from Missouri going, this is fantastic, Evelyn. And so someone mentioned on here the most empowering women's networking groups. I'm a little partial to females in finance, but
Yes.
there are
And
so
I-
many out there. Find your people.
Find your
Yeah,
people.
find your
Yeah,
people.
that's
I'm
right.
partial.
Find your people.
I have a mastermind, Women in Insurance Mastermind. It's
There
free.
you go.
So it's on Facebook as well. So I
Thank you
posted
for
it in
this
the
so
chat.
much, Suzanne. I appreciate it.
No, I thank you both so much as well. My pleasure. It's my honor to serve NAIFA. It's my honor to be able to bring people like you guys on here. See, I say it all the time. But you beautiful women, thank you so much for spreading the message. And again, we can't ask everyone enough. I'll tell you where else we really need that. We need it in advocacy now
Yes.
more than ever. So if you're not a NAIFA member, please consider joining us and adding to the ranks and making sure that our legislators and policymakers are really getting the full story of what's happening on Main Street, USA. Okay,
Amen.
with no further ado, I'm going to say again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody, we will meet back at 2:00. We are going to be joined by Andrew Rinn, another one of our top popular speakers coming to us from our collaboration with FSP. He's going to talk about executive carve-outs and executive benefits and how that can be added into your financial planning. And so, as always, he's coming to us from Emeritus, one of our great partners. We will see you at 2:00. Thank you.